Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Chris here from Esports News, Axe Rotation, however the flip you know me on these interwebs. And today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Well, not that different. Relatively. It's not an everyday thing, but you guys know a few weeks ago I did do a best Call of Duty player ranking where I put every player in the Call of Duty League currently in a tier list and rank them. I will make some quick adjustments and then I'll be right back. I have to add Exceed and whoever else joined the league recently and remove Legend. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. So I have actually edited this, but what I'm going to do to make this a little bit more engaging and like a little bit more succinct, I'm going to look at each team before I move their players into their given power ranking. So I'm going to start with Faze Vegas. Of course, looking at their difficulty of schedule, they had quite the difficult schedule. They went up against really all of the top teams in this game. Went up against Thieves. They lost 0-3 to, they got 3-0 by Thieves, right? They beat Gentlemates in a really exciting Game 5. Then they also came out of the break beating the Toronto Koi. I'm sorry, they went into the break after beating the Toronto Koi with a really decisive Game 5. Came out of the break 3-0 Optic Texas, 3-0 Cloud9 New York. Not surprising, right? Surprising loss to G2 Minnesota, who reasserted themselves as one of the real contenders in this game in this series. This was really the catalyst for their turnaround that we saw really culminate in a very, very surprising win over Toronto Koi. We'll talk about that when we get to them in a second. But their last win was a pretty decisive one over the Vancouver Surge yesterday at time of recording. I mean, they absolutely pants those guys. So let's look at the Call of Duty tier list. Of course, honestly, let's just obligatorily put all four of them into godlike, right? Uh, Yeah, I mean, this is like that meme of the bouncer where he's like, where he sees the guy at the door and he's like, "Where you going, buddy?" Yeah, draws a. Let's just put you in solid. Let's put you in solid, brother. We're not gonna put you in godlike. I mean, you've been a contributor, but not a consistent contributor. No disrespect meant, but you know, Abuza, 04 and Synth have just been turning it on the whole season. They've been turning up the mustard. So, speaking of people who did not turn up the mustard this season, we have the Boston Breach. Of course, they beat the Carolina Royal Ravens pre-exceed, right? That's the way that we define the Ravens: pre-exceed, post-exceed, PE Ravens, and you know, PE Ravens. So it's like the Naruto time skip, you know. Uh, PTS Naruto, you know, and we have PE Royal Ravens. So 3-1 over the PE Royal Ravens, 3-2 over G2 when they were at their worst, right? Lost to the Riyadh Falcons. Of course, Riyadh have been a great team all season. They lost to the Vancouver Surge. This was the Vancouver Surge's lone win, I'm pretty sure. Lost to Miami Heretics. Not really that surprising. Miami's been looking great. But the way that they lost is what's really notable here for Boston. It was a pretty embarrassing loss. 3-2 versus Cloud9 New York. I mean, another one, pretty embarrassing to almost lose to Cloud9 New York and then 6-0 them in the S&D. Not really an encouraging thing to look back at, right? And then you lost 2-3 to Paris Gentlemates, so that's respectable. Gentlemates are a good team, but their form has been all over the place. So with that in mind, I'm going to say Cammy has been in solid. I'll put Cammy in decent. I'll put Cammy in decent because Boston's not been good overall. For solid, honestly, let's put Snoopy in solid. We'll put Purge a level below, right? Where's that man Purge? Oh, there he is. Okay. Fighting for a spot for show. And then where's my guy Nasty? He was in a Surge jersey. There he is. All right, and then we'll put Nasty in the godlike spot. Dude, that's kind of crazy. Off rip, we got 3 players from last year's Vancouver Surge in the godlike spot. Imagine these guys were on the same team. Divine boom sound. So, you guys tired of that joke yet? So let's look at the next team, of course, that being the Carolina Exceeds, the Carolina Royal Ravens, the Carolina Slashers, whatever you guys want to call them, the hash-slinging Slashers, whatever. Lost 1-3 to the Boston Breach. Obviously, this is PE, pre-Exceed. Lost 0-3 to Riyadh, PE vibes, PE excuse, PE cheese. Throw it all out there. And then, dude, let's look at this. Absolute gauntlet. 3-1 versus Miami Heretics. This was a head-turning win, right? Of course. Miami's been a solid team. Carolina Royal Ravens looked absolutely hopeless, or so we thought. Exceed has never been a standout player coming from challengers. He's been brought up 3 separate times, and 3 separate times he has not impressed us. He even got the name Burger King which, if you know what a burger is in Call of Duty terms, not a term of endearment. So, 3-2 over Cloud9 New York. You expect that, right? Cloud9 has looked competitive in weird pockets, just where they get good maps through in the series, and then absolutely not competitive in other pockets when they get maps that are unfavorable to them. G2 Minnesota beat them really at the time when their powers were starting to come back, right? This is like when MJ got the shoes. I'm sorry, when MJ got the shoes. After MJ lost the shoes and he finally was able to beat the Monstars, that's how G2's looking right now, you know? And then you had the 3-1 over Optic Texas, which is a really surprising way to start our Friday. And lastly, we had their 3-2 victory over the Toronto Koi, which was, I'm sorry, it wasn't Toronto Koi, it was LA Thieves. They beat the LA Thieves. This AI was wrong. See, this is why you don't use AI for these things, kids. You use your brain. So, let's rank the exceeds. I'm going to put Craze in solid because he's had a couple games that were quite questionable, but he's been an amazing player overall. Do not think that I'm not high on Craze. I am quite high on Craze. And yeah, I'm not coming down anytime soon. I'm going to put Lurk in decent. No, I'm not gonna put them in decent. They're 5-2. They're 5-2. Everybody's got to at least be in solid. I'm not gonna pull punches, bro. Like I'm just gonna lean into this all the way. I'm gonna put Nero and Godlike. The Emperor's been. I mean, they've been trying to Etu Brute him all season. They've been trying to stab him in the back, but it's not working. That brother's shooting back. So, the last member to round out the team. Where is my guy Exceed? Where's the backwards hat? Where's that? There it is. All right. And then we got Exceed. I'm going to put Exceed in solid. He's been a solid contributor the whole time. They've really been a team formed around Nero's pop-offs and Craze's overperformances, right? So Craze typically overperforms most times you get him on a map that's pretty favorable to him, and that's really what Carolina's been banking on. So I really like what I've seen from them. They've been really just a transformative team without Slasher. I hate to say it, love Slasher, but they've looked so much better without him. Now, speaking of people who have not looked much better, we have the Cloud9 New York guys who are sitting at a really, really rough 1-6 with 5 game 5s. 5 game 5s. 5 game 5s. All losses. Lost 3-2 to G2 Minnesota. Beat the LA Thieves. Weird one there. Lost 2-3 to the Miami Heretics. Lost 3-2 to the Vancouver Surge. Wait, is that true? Grok, is that true? Let's look this up. Let's look this up. Let's check those Carfax, because that doesn't sound right to me, ladies and gents. Something reeks of BS. They beat the Vancouver Surge. The only team they beat was the Vancouver Surge. Where are you getting that from, Google? Point out your cheeks. Alright. So, let's look at this. G2, 3-2 loss to them. They lost 5 game 5s. Google's right about that, but they got the wrong wrong teams in the results. So let's not look at the team results as much as the actual, map results, right? So a lot of game 5 losses. Cloud9 has been very close against some pretty good teams, admittedly, right? G2, good team. They're very close against them. Miami Heretics, very close against them. Super competitive. General Mates, same thing. And then Boston Breach and Riyadh Falcon, same thing. Oddly competitive in these series. They're just like those ducks in that picture, They're just under the water, just kicking. But they look so calm in these losses, It looks like it's not phasing them, but they're definitely phased. Definitely phased. So, without further ado, let's start ranking the players. I'm going to say that Vivid has been decent. I'm typically not a Vivid fan, but he's been proving me wrong this year. He's been playing very well. Honestly, he's had some maps where he was the lone standout. And Vivid's been transforming everyone's opinion of him as a player by just playing a lot better. Mac Melts, we're going to put him in the solid category. Let's look, where's Benjamin Beans? Because I know exactly where I'm putting him.
There's no way out of this one.
Just wait for this. Fighting for his life. That boy's fighting for his spot. Beans has been, apart from sniping, I mean, that guy's just been all over the place, bro. And then we got Afro. I'm going to put him in solid. He's had some bad games and bad series, and otherwise he's been amazing, but he's had some bad games / series. That's why I have to put him in solid. and not in godlike. He's not been godlike. He's been very good in pockets, but in other pockets he's been low impact. Speaking of teams that have been low impact, we have G2 Minnesota. Of course, let's just look at the actual official pages, because this AI hack job that Google gave me is actually like, it's actually going to get me tight. Let's just look at the official recorded like results, right? So of course they beat Cloud9 in a game 5, lost 1-3 to Optic Texas, lost a game 5 to the Boston Brioche going into the break, lost a game 5 to the Riyadh Falcons coming out of the break, lost a game to the PE Carolina Royal Ravens coming out of the break as well. So 3 game 5 losses in a row for these guys. Absolutely tilting. And then they finally righted the ship the next week, getting a surprise 3-1 over the Faze Vegas boys and a surprising 3-0 over the Toronto Koi boys. So I would say, based on just recent form and the fact that the G2 Minnesota guys have been very close, they could honestly have been 5-2 if a lot of these one map games went a different way, right? Well, I mean, if you look at all the one map games and you give them a 50-50, right? They lose the Cloud9 game. Let's say they win the Boston game and they win the Riyadh game. I mean, they're 4-3 and they're in winners. So G2 is very close. They're very close. Just like Cloud9, they're very close. And this league has so much parity. It's such a map and series-based esport. These guys could make a very serious run and make a very surprising run. All the metrics are there saying that they could really make that kind of run. So, enough yapping about G2 and why I think they are the underdog of all underdogs going into Major 1. Let's get into ranking their players. So, going into Major 1, what do I think of all the boys on G2? I think Mamba has been... I'm on the verge of putting him in godlike. Mamba's been amazing. I've been loving what I've seen from Mamba. Even though these guys have been losing, as a rookie, he's just been playing well beyond what you expect from a typical CDL rookie, right? Of course, Kremp. I mean, we have a whole map named after this guy, Kremp Losses. Like, you got to put him in godlike. If there's a map or a call out named after you, well, let's not say a call out, because there's Lamar, and Lamar was not. He was not shaking it up like that. Let's just call a bean a bean. Now, let's get into the other players on the team. Of course, we have Estriel. Estriel has been a decent player. Honestly, a lot of the dip in form thus far was a result of Estriel just having a not great stage, right? If we're going to put people in decent and be very scrutinizing in the way that we look at these players and their performances, I'm going to put Skies in decent as well. A lot of the burden was put on Skies and his performances, even though Estriel was also underperforming mightily. So I'm going to say Skies in decent is a fair shake. Now let's look at the LA Thieves, speaking of fair shakes, and see what happened for them. Look at my boy Neum on the page. Love to see that. So, let's look at their completed matches. The Thieves, of course, as we all know, went 4-3, securing a winner's bracket spot for the major, where they will face the Carolina Exceeds in round 1. That should be a really fun rematch because we obviously just saw it go to round 11. If you watched the last video to be uploaded, the recap of week 5, then you know all about that matchup. So, looking at it, speaking of all the matchups for the LA Thieves, they of course got a hot 3-0 over Faze Vegas to start their 2026 campaign. They followed it up with a hot 3-1 over Celium and the Riyadh Falcons, and then they lost 2 3-0s to top 4 teams, it must be said, Toronto Koi and Paris General top 4 in terms of our expectations going into this, not actual results, right? Then they came out the next week, faced Optic Texas. They got a 3-1 over the defending world champs, which was Kenny's resurgence series. This is where everybody's like, okay, Kenny might not get dropped. Then the Boston Breach, they took them down in a surprising Game 5. Weren't really expecting that one to go to Game 5, right? But it did, and that's that. So looking at the last one that they played the Carolina Royal Ravens, like I said yesterday at time of recording, and they lost a heartbreaking round 11 after going up 5-3. So, I mean, none of these performances were extremely embarrassing apart from their performance going into the break and immediately coming out of it, right? So after that, they just looked normal. And even in the Carolina Royal Ravens series, very winnable. It's just uncharacteristic day from Scrap, right? Speaking of Scrap, I have to put him in godlike. I mean, Scrap has been Scrap so far. He's been the only player on LA Thieves who has been really good throughout all 7 of the matches that we've seen. Spare just the one yesterday on Sunday. Yeah, this is really the first bad weekend that I've seen Scrap have in a while, if I'm being honest with you. Hydra, I'm going to put him at decent. He's been low impact this season. I'm going to put Abezy in decent as well. And this might surprise some of you guys, but I'm going to put Kenny in solid. Kenny has really been, at points, the highlight of this team, especially recently. When Scrap has had his recent dip in form, Kenny's been stepping up. I mean, he's been leading the kills in some of these maps. He's been leading the damage. He's been making plays in S&D. I mean, Ken's looking like he's back. He's back. So, yeah, I mean, that's the LA Thieves. I'm going to put Hydra and Abezy in decent. Abezy obviously turned up last weekend and this weekend, so he'll obviously be in solid or godlike very soon, but he had a very slow start to the game, and he was consequentially kind of costing a little bit, if we're being honest. So that's why I had to bump him down to just Dece, because he had a rough start to the season. Now, speaking of people who had a rough start to the season, we have the Miami Heretics, my boy Dempsey's new team, and let's check out their recent form. So looking at their matches, they of course went 3-4 to get put in losers in heartbreaking fashion. They lost their first series game 5 to Toronto Koi, lost their second series game 5 to Optic Tech to start defending world champs. They won a game 5 over Cloud9 New York, which in retrospect is not that surprising. Cloud9 New York have absolutely zero ice in game 5s, and their map pool is so shallow that, you can't swim in it. Looking at the Carolina Royal Ravens, of course, the post-succeed Carolina Royal Ravens beat them 3-1. Not surprising now in retrospect, knowing what we know. Vancouver Surge, of course, obligatory 3-0. Boston Breach toppled them with little to no effort. And then they played the Paris Gentlemen pretty closely up until the game 4, and then it all kind of fell apart when Trakes and Metals had kind of a bad map. Both drops .7s, and that's all she wrote. So, looking at Miami, they've been a really, really good team. Their teamwork has been phenomenal. This guy, I'm going to put Trakes in solid. Metals, where are you, Metals? All right, I'm going to put Rencor in godlike because Rencor has been Rencor. He's been absolutely godlike. I'm going to put Metals in solid. Metals has been impressing the ever-loving crap out of me. So I'm going to put him in solid. And then where is my guy? Where you at, Super? Where is he? There he is. All right. We're going to put Super. I'm going to put Super in godlike. Him with that sniper, he's been amazing. Him and Rencor have been the two standouts. I was going to say this is the first team to have two people in the godlike tier, but it's not because we have Atlanta Faze Vegas with 3 players in the godlike tier. And I think that's fair for 04, Abuza, and Simp. All 3 have been amazing. So, looking at our next team, speaking of people that have been amazing at times, we have Optic Texas, of course, right? Defending 2024-2025 CDL World Champions, defending EWC 2025 winners. They got that dinner plate. So, let's look at their dinner plate from the last 7 series. Have they been eating good, or have they been eating those leftover struggle meals? Oh, it looks like there's been some ramen in their plate recently. Look at this, guys. 3-0 over the Riyadh Falcons to kick off the season. 3-1 over G2 Minnesota. 3-2 over the Miami Heretics. They're rivals since the inception of the CDL. Faze Vegas, of course, 3-0'd them in embarrassing fashion to the surprise of literally everyone. Vancouver Surge got a dominant 3-1 win over them, but you expect that with Tej on the roster. This team has not looked much better than they did with Legend, right? LA Thieves absolutely took them out back to the shed, got that switch, went right to work on the cheeks. Same thing with the Carolina Exceeds. I mean, they went right to work on those cheeks. 3-1, 3-1 from the LA Thieves. And in the game 4s, Optic got absolutely smoked. Same in the Overload. So, yeah, they've been on a real downturn lately. Obviously, we know who we're putting in the godlike tier. The guy who saved Optic, the savior of Optic, Mercules. Got to put him in the godlike tier. Solid, I'm going to put... I'm going to put Hook in the solid tier. I'm going to put Splashy in the decent tier. Ah, man. Warlord. What do we do? Shotzi Amin, where we put you, man? Ah, 50th HP KD. Is he fighting for a spot? He's the face of Optic and the face of the CDL, but he's playing so badly. Where do we put him, guys? We'll put him in decent. We'll put him in decent. Shotzi can never fight for his spot, so that makes a choice for us. He's been playing very badly for his standards, but he's still Shotzi. He's still had some great moments, and he'll definitely get better, you would expect, right? You don't expect Shotzi to keep performing badly. Speaking of people who you don't expect to keep performing badly, we have a team who has been absolutely on fire. Spare a few moments. The Paris Gentlemates, they rebranded and completely changed the identity of this LA Gorillas franchise. They used to be a franchise known for just being absolutely hopeless and without a life raft, in most of their series. But with Dan Ghosty, Sib, Neptune, and Envoy, they completely squad wiped. They rebuilt from scratch, and this team is absolutely diff. These guys are amazing. They've been playing amazing, and I think they'll do really well at Major 1. So let's look at their hit list. They, of course, had a 3-0 over the PT Vancouver Surge, pre-Tej Vancouver Surge. Lost a Game 5 to Faze Vegas. This is where Faze Vegas really, really started to pull it together and separate from some of the mid-pack teams and assert themselves as one of the S-tier teams, right? You got a hot 3-0 over the LA Thieves. This is where the Gentlemates really made it clear that they are a top-tier team, right? Not just a team where, oh, kickoff classic, they look good, and then they fall off. Nope, they're the real deal. 3-2 over Cloud9 New York because, of course, right, Cloud9 always forced Game 5. Riyadh Falcons, they, of course, lost to. Riyadh was going really hard to get the number 1 seed. This is also the Park the Bus Cheese series, so yeah, I mean, without the Park the Bus Cheese, who knows? Who knows, bro? That whole series could have gone very different without that Park the Bus Cheese. Sib was very checked, very pissed, very live about the whole thing, so I can't imagine that it didn't have an impact on the outcome, but let's not get too deep into the weeds of that. They beat Toronto Koi on Friday with a 3-2, of course, and then they toppled the Miami Heretics to the surprise of really no one with a 3-1 on Sunday. So, of course, let's put the players in rankings. Godlike, we, of course, got to put Dan Ghosty. Envoy, that might surprise some of you guys, but Envoy has been the best player on the Gentlemates, at least passing the eye test this season. Ghosty, we all thought was going to be an absolute demon on the map, but honestly, well, Ghosty's been a demon on the map. We'll put him in Godlike too. Neptune, got to put him in Godlike. He's been on one. And then Sib, we'll put Sib in solid. He's been a very solid contributor to this Gentlemates team. You don't go 5-2 with the difficulty schedule that these guys had without Sib contributing and carrying his bales of water, if you will. So, let's look at our next team on the list, that being the team that I'm probably the most fond of at this point, the Riyadh Falcons. You guys know I was a big Paris Legion fan before they became the Vegas Legion. What's going on with this now? All right, here we go. So Riyadh Falcons, let's look at their results. We know that they're 5-2. Wow, they started out really badly. I mean, could you say that they're starting out really badly if they go up against the defending world champions? Obviously, 3-0 is not what you want. New team. You go up against the defending world champs, you get a switch to your cheeks. You go up against LA Thieves, they get a switch for your cheeks. And then you just take the switch and you start giving it to everybody else's cheeks. 3-0 over the pre-exceed Carolina Royal Ravens, must be said. 3-1 over the Boston Breach going into the break. They played 4 matches going into the break. That's some schedule cheese. 3-2 over the G2 Minnesota boys coming out of the break. This is when G2 was looking to be really improved, so very, very respectable win there. Beat the Paris Gentlemates 3-1, another super respectable win, negating the Park the Bus cheese. And then a 3-2 over Cloud9 New York, which, of course, right, as we've established many times in this video and before this, typical. So, let's put these guys in their spots. Godlike, of course, we got to go. You can do it too, Phase Up. You can do it too, Falcons are here, I guess. We're going to put Pred in. Let's put Pred in Godlike. They're 5-2. I mean, somebody's got to be Godlike, right? Kismet, he's been a very solid contributor. Exnid is breaking into the Godlike category. He's been having some serious takeovers, so he'll be there pretty soon. I'm very confident in that. Exnid, you guys know I've been singing his praises all year long. Well, all over these last 2 seasons. So, very happy to see his progression as a player, and I think he'll only get better, especially going to LAN. He's going to be on one. This is his first LAN in a very advantageous position. So I expect Exnid to look really good. I expect him to get a pretty good performance under his belt, right? His first LAN where he has a good squad, and they're coming in with some real pedigree coming out of this online qualifier stage. So, speaking of teams that are coming out of the online qualifier stage with no pedigree, we have the Toronto Koi, who had a really, really weird online qualifying stage. They had a really seriously difficult schedule, it has to be said, right? Going up against G2, the post-Exceed Ravens, the Paris Gentlemates, the LA Thieves, the Miami Heretics, and Faze Vegas. Winning 3 games is very, very respectable. Out of that slate, I mean, you have a gauntlet there, right? Miami's been a top tier team. Faze Vegas look to be the best team in the game. LA Thieves have really righted their wrongs. They've gotten a lot better since the break. Carolina Royal Ravens with Exceed, they've looked phenomenal. Paris Gentlemates have looked great all year, and G2 have made a lot of considerable improvements. So, looking at it, they, of course, like I said before, beat the Miami Heretics, beat the Vancouver Surge, 3-2 over Heretics, 3-0 over Surge, lost 2-3 to FaZe Vegas, 3-0 to LA Thieves, lost 3-1 to the post-Exceed Ravens, lost 3-2 to the Paris Gentlemates, not surprisingly, and then surprisingly they did lose 3-0 to the G2 Minnesota side, but G2 has been making a lot of improvements, and they beat FaZe right before that. So G2 clearly is a very good team, and they're not one to underestimate. So let's estimate where these Koi boys are. Insight, he's been a solid contributor. I'm not going to put him anywhere disrespectful. Insight has been honestly really good. He's been really good. He's really changed a lot of people's opinions this season. He's been playing way better than we have expected him to, based on his performance in previous years. And yeah, he's been a solid contributor. Same thing from Kleenex. He's had up and downs, but more ups and downs, I would say. Not necessarily on the same level of Joe. His ups have been in the stratosphere, but Toby's definitely had some hops. He's definitely had some ups. So Real, I'm gonna put him in. I'm gonna put Real in decent. Real has honestly been kind of underwhelming for me this year. Just being 100% honest, I expected Real to be more of a contributor playing alongside Joe Deceives. I expected Kleenex to take a slower role, kind of a backseat. But maybe Real was just brought in to be like that third support, not the secondary support. Maybe I just read the move wrong. Because Kleenex has definitely been the secondary support. So, speaking of secondary supports, we have the Vancouver Surge, the worst team in the league as it stands currently, right? These guys have been having a real tough season. You know, they replaced Legend with Tej. They got a lone win over the Boston Breach, but everything else has been an absolute loss, right? So these guys, yeah, I mean, looking at it, right, they've only won 4 maps out of the 24 maps. 4 maps out of 24 played, not encouraging. So, not looking good. 3-0 to the Gentlemates, lost there, obviously. 3-0 loss to the Koi. 3-0 loss to Cloud9. 3-2 win over the Boston Breach. Blow it up. 3-1 loss to Optic, Texas, surprising no one. 3-0 loss to Miami Heretics. And yesterday, of course, a 3-0 loss to FaZe Vegas. So, Legend, we miss you, buddy. Hope you get better and come back to the league. Abe, I'm going to say he's fighting for his spot. I mean, I really was pretty high on Abe as a player coming into the season. But yeah, I mean, he just hasn't really impressed me too much. His team has not been good, so I will offer that caveat. He's probably a much better player than this team would suggest, but I haven't been impressed overall with Abe's performance. I thought he'd be more of a contributor, especially on a team like this where there is so much room for him to showcase his talent and to really just kind of spread his wings. Lunars, he's been decent. That ace is really the highlight of his career in the CDL that I can think of thus far. But yeah, I mean, he's just been decent. I'm gonna say the same for Tej, and I'm gonna say Gwen has been solid. They just don't have anyone else to help contribute. So yeah, that'll just about wrap up my power rankings for the CDL players. I know you guys are going to have some differing opinions, especially about the Optic players and some of our other top ranked players like Pred, etc. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think Envoy and Godlike, for example, is too ambitious? Same with Super. What about Neptune? What about guys like, Snoopy? Should he be in Godlike? Should he be in Solid? Crazed? Where are some snubs? What are some proper applications of these different titles? Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And I'll be doing something similar for all of the teams along similar params, right? So yeah, I hope you guys have a great morning, noon, or night, like I always say, and I'll catch you guys on the next one, which will be me looking at all the teams and ranking them as well. So yeah, once again, Chris from Fake Sports News, X Rotation. However, flip you know me, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.